The final warning. The Concordet's Chamber of Unity stretched across an artificial asteroid, its transparent dome revealing the spectacular dance of binary stars beyond. High Arbiter Vextal, their crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns, addressed the assembled representatives of 300 species. The chamber's curved walls displayed real-time data streams from across known space, each telling the same story: humanity's exponential growth. The evidence is irrefutable. Vextal's harmonic voice resonated through translation fields. In mere centuries, they've achieved what took others millennia. Their expansion rate exceeds safety parameters by orders of magnitude. Ambassador Sarah Chen watched from humanity's modest platform, her expression neutral despite the growing tension. Next to her, Defense Coordinator Marcus Rivera analyzed the displayed data, occasionally making notes on his quantum-linked pad. They both knew what was coming. Therefore, Vextal continued, their crystalline form pulsing with authority. The Concordat hereby demands immediate implementation of the Technology Containment Protocol. All human colonies must submit to oversight. All military vessels must be registered and monitored. All quantum research facilities must be jointly administered. Chen's slight smile caught several alien observers off guard. The chamber's atmosphere shifted as she stood, her simple black uniform contrasting with the ornate robes of other species representatives. "High Arbiter," she said, her voice carrying clearly without technological assistance, "humanity acknowledges your concerns. We have prepared our response." She raised her hand, and holographic displays materialized around the human platform, showing detailed maps of known space. "These markers indicate every registered human settlement," she explained. As she spoke, thousands of points of light flickered into existence. Then more appeared, and more. The chamber erupted in murmurs as the number of settlements tripled, then quadrupled. "What is the meaning of this?" Vextal demanded, their crystalline form flickering with agitation. "These," Chen continued calmly, "are our actual colonies. We've maintained a policy of selective disclosure, knowing this day would come. You see, humanity learned something from Earth's history. True security lies not in concentration of power, but in distribution." Rivera stood now, adding, "Each colony is self-sufficient. Each has manufacturing capabilities that exceed your estimates by factors of thousands. Each operates on principles of quantum mechanics that your scientists deemed impossible." The chamber erupted in chaos as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just expanded faster than expected. They'd expanded far beyond what anyone had thought possible, and they'd done it in secret. "This is a violation of every treaty." The Rigelian representative's translator barely kept up with their rapid clicks. "No," Chen corrected. "We followed every treaty to the letter. We simply understood them better than you did. Your laws restricted visible emissions, so we developed zero-signature drives. Your treaties limited artificial intelligence, so we created organic quantum computers. You demanded transparency, so we showed you exactly what you expected to see." Vextal's crystalline form had darkened considerably. "You deceived the Concordat." "We protected ourselves," Chen replied. "Every human knows our history. We know what happens when a civilization relies on others for protection or submits to external control. We've spent centuries preparing for this moment, hoping it wouldn't come, but ready if it did." Rivera activated another holographic display, showing the true extent of human military capabilities. The chamber fell silent as the data scrolled past. Fleets of ships using technologies the Concordat had thought theoretical, weapons systems that defied conventional physics, defensive networks that could reshape space-time itself. "We're not here to threaten," Chen said into the silence. "We're here to establish a new understanding. Humanity won't be contained, controlled, or limited. We're willing to cooperate, to trade, to share knowledge, but only as equals. And if we refuse..." Vextal's voice carried a note of challenge. Chen's smile returned, sad but determined. "Then nothing happens. We simply step away. No trade, No cultural exchange. No sharing of innovations. We've prepared for isolation. Have you? The implications hit like a quantum cascade. Humanity's technologies have become integral to countless worlds. Their medical innovations saved millions of lives daily. Their engineering breakthroughs had revolutionized everything from agriculture to space travel. You would abandon the galaxy to protect your autonomy. The Arcturian delegate seemed genuinely puzzled. No, Chen corrected. We would abandon the Concordat to protect our freedom. The galaxy is bigger than your political structure, and humanity has already built relationships beyond your borders. She gathered her materials, nodding to Rivera. You have one standard cycle to consider. Humanity will either be accepted as we are, all of us, including our hidden colonies and technologies, or we will withdraw completely. The choice is yours. As they walked toward the chamber's exit, Rivera murmured, "Think they'll make the right choice." Chen's response was lost in the growing commotion behind them, but her confidence was clear. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for this moment, building redundancies, developing technologies, and establishing connections that the Concordat couldn't begin to imagine. They would survive, thrive even, regardless of the choice made here. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had never been the student they'd assumed. They had been the masters all along, patiently waiting for the right moment to reveal their true nature. Silent thunder. The Concordat's strategic analysis chamber had never been this crowded. Holographic displays filled the massive room with cascading data as the galaxy's finest minds tried to understand what they were seeing. Chief Analyst Zixera, her crystalline tentacles dimmed with exhaustion, stared at the latest reports with growing disbelief. "Impossible," she whispered, but the data didn't change. "They're literally disappearing." Around her, representatives from a dozen intelligence agencies watched as human settlements began vanishing from their sensors. Not through violence or destruction. They simply ceased to exist, leaving behind perfectly normal-looking empty spaces. Admiral Cathor, his scaled skin reflecting the holographic light, leaned forward. "How many so far?" 30% of known human territory, Zixera responded, "but that's just what we can track." Given what Ambassador Chen revealed about their hidden colonies, she left the implications hanging. The room's atmosphere grew heavier as new data poured in. Trade routes were shifting. Human ships were systematically withdrawing from Concordat space, but not in panic or disorder. Every movement seemed choreographed, part of a vast dance whose pattern only became clear when viewed across hundreds of light years. They're not just leaving. Thor realized, they're closing doors behind them. He was right. As each human vessel departed, subtle changes rippled through local space. Quantum pathways that had been stable for decades began shifting. Navigation became more difficult. Communication channels experienced mysterious delays. "Sir," a junior analyst called out, their bioluminescent patches flashing with excitement. "We've detected unusual activity in the Hyades cluster." The main display shifted, showing a region of space that had been considered uninhabitable. As they watched, massive structures began appearing where nothing had existed before. Orbital rings, space elevators, entire planetary systems that had somehow been hidden from the most sophisticated scanning technologies. "They weren't bluffing," Zixera murmured. "Everything we knew about their capabilities was just the surface." A priority alert flashed across all screens. The Concordat's premier research facility in the Orion Arm had just announced an emergency shutdown. Their quantum computers, built with human consultation, had begun experiencing unexplained anomalies. Similar reports started flooding in from across known space. Systems that relied on human technological insights were becoming unreliable, not failing catastrophically, but working just slightly less efficiently, as if some fundamental understanding was slipping away. "It's a message," Thor growled. "They're showing us what withdrawal really means." The Admiral wasn't wrong. Human medical facilities remained operational, treating existing patients with their usual excellence. But new research had ceased. Human engineering firms continued maintaining existing infrastructure but accepted no new contracts. 1,000 small changes, each insignificant alone, but together painting a picture of methodical disengagement. In the center of the chamber, a new hologram materialized, a real-time map of known trade routes. As they watched, paths that had flowed through human space began rerouting. The new configurations were possible, but drastically less efficient. The economic implications were staggering. They've been preparing for this for generations, Sixth Era realized. Every innovation they shared, every system they helped build, they designed it all to work without them if necessary, but to work better with them. A message arrived from the Concordats High Council, marked with highest priority. Zixera's crystalline form dimmed further as she read it. They want options. Options. Cathor's scales shifted to a darker hue. What options? We can't force them to stay. We can't even find half their territories. We can't replicate their technologies. They're too deeply integrated with principles we barely understand. We can't threaten them. They've shown they can simply step aside. Perhaps, a quiet voice suggested from the back of the room. That's exactly what they want us to understand. All eyes turned to Dr. Yenlo, the Concordats' leading genopsychologist. The ancient being's gossamer form barely disturbed the air as they floated forward. Consider, they continued, humans evolved on a death world, surviving against predators that would terrify most species. Their history is filled with conflicts that should have destroyed them, yet each time they emerged stronger. When they reached the stars, we thought they would follow the pattern of other young species, eager to learn, dependent on established civilizations for guidance. The xenopsychologist gestured at the displays around them. Instead, they learned our limitations while hiding their strengths. They built redundancies into everything they touched. They prepared for independence while making themselves indispensable. But why? Someone asked. Why not simply demonstrate their power from the beginning? Because Yenlo's voice carried a note of admiration. They wanted to give peace every possible chance. They built their position of strength not to dominate, but to ensure they could never be dominated. The question isn't what options we have. It's whether we're wise enough to accept the option they're offering. As if in response to the doctor's words, another alert flashed across the screens. More human settlements were vanishing from sensors, more systems showing subtle signs of withdrawal. The message was clear. Time was running out. In the silence that followed, Zixera turned to Cathor. What do we tell the council? The admiral stared at the displays, watching as humanity's true face was revealed not through violence or threats, but through the quiet demonstration of decades of preparation. We tell them, he said finally, that we never understood what we were dealing with, and we tell them that if they want to preserve everything we've built with human help, they need to make a decision. Fast. The price of pride. First Counselor Ralixon stood before the Concordats' emergency assembly, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with barely contained fury. The chamber's ancient walls, carved from asteroids billions of years ago, had witnessed countless crises, but never one quite like this. We cannot allow this defiance to stand, they declared. The Concordat has maintained galactic stability for 50,000 years. We will not be blackmailed by a species barely out of their gravity well. Throughout the chamber, representatives from the Concordat's most powerful members nodded in agreement. Pride, more than logic, drove their response. The humans' revelation of their hidden capabilities wasn't just surprising, it was embarrassing. Our analysis suggests their withdrawal is merely theatrical, Ralixon continued. No species can truly isolate themselves in an interconnected galaxy. We will demonstrate the consequences of defying the Concordat's authority. In a secure command center light years away, Fleet Commander Elena Santos watched the transmission with a mixture of disappointment and resignation. The Concordat was about to learn an expensive lesson about human nature. They're implementing the trade restrictions, her aide reported. All human-registered vessels are being denied access to Concordat ports. They're also freezing our financial assets within their banking networks. Santos nodded, unsurprised. Execute Protocol Omega. Across human space, both visible and hidden, carefully prepared systems activated. The response wasn't what the Concordat expected. There was no panic, no chaos, no desperate attempts to negotiate. Instead, humanity's infrastructure smoothly transitioned to completely independent operation. In the Concordat's financial center, alarms began blaring. Director Venthu stared at his displays in horror as the implications became clear. "They're not using our banking networks," he whispered. "They never were." The human financial system, which everyone had assumed was integrated with the Concordats, simply detached itself. Transactions continued flowing through human space without interruption, revealing an entirely parallel economy that had existed alongside the official one. But that was just the beginning. In the Arturo cluster, a Concordat trade fleet discovered that their navigation systems, based on human quantum principles, had suddenly become less reliable. Not enough to be dangerous, but enough to slow their progress significantly. On thousands of worlds, medical facilities found that their advanced treatment protocols, developed with human assistance, were now operating at reduced efficiency. Again, not enough to endanger patients, but enough to demonstrate what full withdrawal would mean. They built backdoors into everything, Venthu realized, watching the cascade of reports. No, not backdoors. They built everything with dual architectures, one that worked with them, and one that worked without them, just not as well. The Concordat's attempt at coercion had revealed just how deeply humanity had embedded itself into galactic civilization, and how carefully they'd prepared to disengage if necessary. In her command center, Santos received another update. The Concordats trying to access their emergency quantum computing facilities in the Carina sector. She allowed herself a small smile. Let them. The Concordats' most sophisticated quantum computers had been built with human consultation. What they were about to discover was that the underlying principles they thought they understood were actually simplified versions of much more complex theories. Their computers would continue working, but attempts to push them further would reveal the gaps in their knowledge. Message from Ambassador Chen, her aide reported. The Concordats' Inner Council is requesting an emergency session. Declined, Santos replied. They'd made their choice. Now they need time to understand its full implications. Throughout the galaxy, the effects of humanity's systematic withdrawal continued to ripple outward. Trade routes became longer and more expensive as human-developed shortcuts ceased to function. Manufacturing processes became less efficient as subtle optimizations disappeared. 1,000 little conveniences that other species had taken for granted began to fade. In the Concordats' emergency assembly, the mood had shifted dramatically. Pride had given way to growing alarm as the true extent of their dependence on human innovation became clear. We must reconsider our position, a representative from the Perseus Arm argued. The humans aren't just withdrawing their visible assets, they're demonstrating that everything they shared with us was just the surface of their capabilities. First Counselor Ralixon's bioluminescence had dimmed considerably. Perhaps we acted hastily. But when they attempted to contact the human delegation, they received a simple automated response. In accordance with the Concordats' recent actions, all diplomatic channels are temporarily suspended. Humanity will reevaluate potential relations in 1 standard year. The message was clear. The Concordats' pride had cost them dearly, and humans wouldn't be rushed into reconciliation. In her command center, Santos reviewed the latest reports. The withdrawal was proceeding exactly as planned. Centuries of preparation were paying off, demonstrating that humanity had learned the lessons of their own history well. Your thoughts, Commander? Her aide asked. Santos looked at the galactic map, where human territories were now showing their true extent. We gave them a chance to accept us as equals, she said quietly. They chose to try force instead. Now they'll learn why Earth's history taught us to always have a backup plan. The stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the political upheaval below. But in offices and chambers throughout the galaxy, The realization was spreading. Humanity hadn't just prepared for independence, they had architected every interaction with galactic civilization to ensure they could never truly be controlled. The price of the Concordats' pride would be measured not in violence or destruction, but in the quiet absence of human innovation, efficiency, and advancement. It was a lesson that would reshape galactic politics forever. Checkmate before war. The Concordats' military high command facility on Arcturus Prime was experiencing something unprecedented. Silence. Grand Marshal HFY, his crystalline exoskeleton dulled with stress, studied the latest intelligence reports with growing concern. The massive holographic displays surrounding him showed a galaxy in transformation, but not through the expected means of war. Another trade hub has gone dark, his aide reported. The Centauri Nexus this time. No violence, no confrontation. The human operators simply left. HFY's crystalline fragments shifted in agitation. The Centauri Nexus had been one of the galaxy's most crucial trade intersections. Without human quantum tunneling technology, shipping times would increase tenfold. Status of the militant factions, he asked, though he already suspected the answer. The Orion hardliners are still calling for military action, but the aide's voice trailed off as new data streamed across their screens. They've discovered something interesting about their warships. Of course they had. The humans had been helping design and upgrade military vessels across the galaxy for decades. Now, everyone was discovering just how clever that assistance had been. In a secure observation post at the edge of known space, Admiral Sarah Chen, now promoted from her former diplomatic role, watched the same data with quiet satisfaction. Next to her, Marcus Rivera coordinated the continued withdrawal of human assets. The Orion fleet is starting to understand, Rivera reported. Their ship's quantum cores are perfectly functional, but without our maintenance protocols, they're operating at 60% efficiency. Not enough to cripple them, but enough to make them think twice. Chen finished. How many other militaries are discovering similar surprises? All of them. Rivera's smile was grim. Turns out when you ask humans to help improve your weapons, we take a very thorough approach to system integration. Across the galaxy, military commanders were making the same discovery. Ships and weapons built with human assistance remained operational, but had lost their cutting edge. Defense systems were perfectly functional, but no longer quite as impenetrable. Nothing was broken, but everything was just slightly less effective. In the Concordats' Economic Council, the situation was even more dire. Director Venfu's latest report had caused an uproar. The humans didn't just build a parallel economy, he explained to the assembled representatives. They built multiple parallel economies. Every time we close off one avenue of trade, 3 more appear that we never knew existed. They're not fighting our sanctions. They're making them irrelevant. The evidence was undeniable. Humanity had spent centuries creating redundant systems, alternative trade routes, and backup plans for their backup plans. The Concordats' attempts at economic pressure weren't just failing. They were revealing just how limited their understanding of human capabilities had been. In her command post, Chen received word that the Arcturus Commerce Guild, one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful trade organizations, was requesting a private channel. They're starting to understand the real game, she noted. Authorization granted. The guild's representative, a being of pure energy contained within an ancient mechanical shell, appeared before them. This was never about military power, was it? The entity asked without preamble. War is inefficient, Chen replied simply. Humanity learned that lesson centuries ago. Why destroy when you can simply reorganize? Your species has rewritten the rules of galactic power without firing a shot, the guild representative observed. The Concordats' authority was based on controlling access to advanced technology, trade routes, and economic systems. But you've demonstrated that all of these can exist independently of their control. We didn't rewrite the rules, Rivera interjected. We just showed that the old rules were based on assumptions that weren't necessarily true. Throughout human space, the withdrawal continued with mechanical precision. But it wasn't just a retreat, it was a demonstration. Every system that humans pulled out of revealed another layer of preparation, another level of redundancy that no one had suspected. In the Concordat's military high command, Grand Marshal Kexby finally reached the conclusion that many others were approaching. The humans hadn't been preparing for war. They'd been preparing to make war unnecessary. "They've achieved something unprecedented," he reported to the High Council. "Total strategic superiority without a single act of aggression. We can't fight them because they've made fighting irrelevant. We can't isolate them because they've built systems we never knew existed. We can't pressure them because they've prepared for every form of pressure we could conceive." The High Council chamber erupted in debate, but the truth was becoming clear to everyone. Humanity hadn't just outmaneuvered them. They'd done it so thoroughly that traditional power structures were becoming meaningless. Back in her command post, Chen watched as more and more independent organizations began reaching out directly to human space, bypassing the Concordat entirely. The old order wasn't being destroyed. It was being quietly, efficiently made obsolete. "Message from Earth Central," Rivera announced. "They're asking if we should begin Phase 2. Chen studied the galactic map, where the true extent of human influence was finally becoming clear to everyone. "No need," she replied. "The game's already over. They just don't all know it yet." She turned to face the starfield visible through the command post's quantum glass windows. Humanity had spent centuries preparing not for conflict, but for its prevention. They had built their position so carefully, so thoroughly that when the moment of truth arrived, victory had been achieved before the first move was made. "Checkmate," she whispered to the stars, without ever saying check. A new order. The Great Hall of Reconciliation had been built in record time, a testament to what could be achieved when species work together as true equals. Unlike the imposing chambers of the Concordat, this space was designed for genuine dialogue. The circular chamber housed representatives from every spacefaring civilization, arranged not by status or power, but in a pattern that optimized acoustic and visual communication for all species. High Arbiter Vextal, now serving in an advisory role to the new Galactic Assembly, watched as delegates arrived for the historic session. 1 year had passed since humanity's withdrawal, and the galaxy had changed more in that time than in the previous millennium. Ambassador Chen entered without ceremony, accompanied by representatives from both established powers and emerging civilizations. The humans had spent the past year demonstrating a different way of conducting interstellar relations, one based on mutual benefit rather than hierarchical control. "Welcome to the first official session of the Galactic Assembly," Chen began, her voice carrying naturally through the chamber's advanced acoustic design. "Before we begin, I want to address the question many of you still have. Why did humanity choose this path?" The chamber fell silent. Even those who had benefited from the new order wanted to understand the reasoning behind humanity's actions. "Earth's history taught us something crucial," Chen continued. "True stability doesn't come from control. It comes from interdependence. The old Concordat maintained peace through restriction. We propose maintaining it through cooperation." Holographic displays activated, showing the new trade networks that had emerged over the past year. Where the Concordat had centralized power, the new system was distributed. Where they had restricted technology, the new approach encouraged innovation with safeguards. "Humanity didn't withdraw to punish or to prove a point," Chen explained. "We withdrew to demonstrate that another way was possible. And you've all seen the results. The data was undeniable. Trade volume had actually increased under the new distributed system. Technological advancement had accelerated as artificial barriers were removed. Even former adversaries had found common ground in the new economic frameworks." From his position in the chamber, Director Venthu of the former Economic Council nodded in understanding. "You built the parallel systems not just as a contingency, but as a proof of concept." "Exactly," Chen confirmed. "Every backup network, every alternative technology, every redundant system. They weren't just insurance policies. They were prototypes for a better way of organizing galactic civilization. The chamber's displays shifted to show the new diplomatic framework. Gone were the rigid hierarchies of the Concordat, replaced by a dynamic system that adapted to the needs and capabilities of all members. But what prevents this new system from falling into the same patterns as the old? Asked a representative from one of the younger spacefaring races. Grand Marshal Kexby, who had also transitioned to an advisory role, answered before Chen could. Because they built it to be impossible to centralize. The humans didn't just create alternative systems, they created systems that work better when power is distributed. Chen smiled. We learned from our own mistakes. Earth's history is full of empires that fell because they tried to control everything. The future belongs to networks, not hierarchies. The discussion continued as representatives explored the implications of the new order. Questions were raised about security, resource allocation, and dispute resolution. For each concern, humanity had not just an answer, but a working demonstration of the solution. There's one other thing, Chen added, activating a new set of displays. We've been holding back some of our more advanced developments, not out of distrust, but because we wanted to ensure they would be introduced into a galaxy ready to use them responsibly. The chamber filled with murmurs as the first technical specifications appeared. Advances in quantum physics that made current FTL travel look primitive. Medical technologies that could revolutionize healthcare across species barriers. Energy systems that could transform entire civilizations. These aren't bargaining chips, Chen clarified. They're wedding gifts. The old order was based on scarcity and control. The new one will be based on abundance and cooperation. As the session progressed, more species began sharing their own technological and cultural achievements, innovations they had held back under the old system out of fear or political pressure. The chamber became a marketplace of ideas, each contribution strengthening the bonds between civilizations. There will be challenges, Chen acknowledged. Disputes to resolve, conflicts to manage, problems we haven't even imagined yet. But we'll face them as equals, each contributing our unique strengths to find solutions. The session continued long into the night, as representatives from across the galaxy worked together to refine and implement the new frameworks. The humans had done more than force a change. They had shown a better way was possible. In a quiet moment, Ambassador Chen stood at one of the hall's observation windows, watching the stars. Marcus Rivera joined her, datapad in hand. Think it will last? He asked quietly. Chen smiled, watching as representatives from former rival species collaborated on solutions to shared challenges. It will last because it's designed to evolve. We didn't build a new empire, we built a new ecosystem. The stars continued their eternal dance, witnessing the birth of a new era in galactic civilization. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented. They had changed the course of galactic history not through force or dominance, but by demonstrating a better way forward. The age of control was over. The age of cooperation had begun.